everybody, and welcome back to Base Camp. Today we're going to be talking about Bible translations and how to pick the right one for you. In the modern Bible aisle in any grocery store, bookstore, even a Christian bookstore, there are a lot of different choices in Bibles, and it can definitely be overwhelming. The number of choices and how to pick the right one for you, or maybe you're looking for one for your kid and you're going in, how can I figure out which one I should choose? But the fact is that this wasn't always a headache that most people didn't have through the centuries. The first Bible translation of any biblical text was the Septuagint. It was the Hebrew or Old Testament translated from Hebrew into Greek for the Jewish communities, many of which no longer understood Hebrew fluently. And it was done about 250 to 100 BC. The first translation of the full Bible was the Latin Vulgate, translated by Jerome. He started translating in 382 AD. The first English translation was translated from the Latin Vulgate in 1382. It was called the Wycliffe Bible in honor of John Wycliffe. Wycliffe had wanted the common people to have the Bible in their own language so they could have access without having to go to the church. But this Bible was banned and burned, and the authorities were so unhappy that they actually dug up Wycliffe's bones and burned them. Yeah. Unfortunately, many of the early Bible translators were persecuted and martyred for their translations. Martin Luther translated the Bible into his native German, and William Tyndale and John Wycliffe both worked to translate the Bible. William Tyndale was actually burned at the stake for his efforts. Many of these people would have been very pleased to see that we now have the Bible in very many forms today, and many of them may have even been a little jealous, because this was not always the case. And we should be very grateful. The modern translation method, there are two main methods that are commonly used. It's the word-for-word method and the thought-for-thought method. The word-for-word is literally taking the words in Greek, Hebrew, or Greek or Hebrew, and translating them into English, word for word. This tends to leave a little bit choppier of a translation, and it isn't very smooth, and it can be difficult to read. So the other theory in translation is the thought for thought. It literally takes the thoughts and translates them into the language that they're translating for. Many Bibles are not hardcore on one or the others. Many of them use a blended version of this, but that is the general consensus, that they either are thought for thought or word for word to some degree. And then there are paraphrases, and that's a whole nother ball game. So you can have Bibles like Interlinear Bible, which is takes the Hebrew or the Greek on one line and the English translation right below, and literally takes it word for word and translate it as it's written in the original language. This translation can be a little hard to read, and for the most part, only the scholars and people who read Greek or Hebrew will typically use this, but they are available. A commonly used form of word-for-word translation would be like New American Standard Bible, American Standard Version, King James, and New King James are both word for word. A good common one that does thought for thought would be like the New Living Translation. There are others that have a balanced approach, that they kind of use a combination of both of these. The New International Version, which is commonly used throughout many churches, would be an example of this balanced approach. The Message would be a paraphrase, which, if you're taking serious Bible studies, you probably don't want to use the Message, but it would be good for somebody who's just getting started. There are even comic book versions if you really want to, but that would if you wanted to take that route, I wouldn't recommend that for serious Bible studies. If you've got especially a young child who's just getting started reading in the Bible for themselves, that might be an easier way to go. A lot depends on which one you choose, depends greatly on what you're planning on using it for. If you're a student at a seminary or college, or a ministry student in a program of study, or even an adult just leading an adult Bible study, you may want to lean more towards a word-for-word type of Bible, mainly because those tend to be more accurate. Might not be the right term, but they tend to be more used because they're more thorough. But if you're just reading for your own pleasure, or if you're a person who's just getting into the faith and is just starting to read the Bible for themselves, a thought for thought might be a little bit easier if you are not a very strong reader. And you have to be honest about where your reading level is. Especially if you are looking for something for your child, or a new person to the faith, somebody who is just getting into it. You might want to go more for thought for thought. The New Living Translation is a good thought for thought Bible that's fairly easy to read and comprehend. And ultimately, you have to decide what's best for you. There are a lot of websites out there that will let you compare and contrast different verses of different Bibles. So do your research, do your homework, and ultimately you have to decide which one is best for you. Most of the time, they're pretty thorough. Our modern Bible translators do a pretty good job of translating. Now, admittedly, some things do get lost in translation with Greek and Hebrew, so always bear that in mind. But they, in general, do a very good job, and they're fairly accurate in their translation. So, like I said, do your homework and then make a decision. Frequently, most people will have more than one different translation of the Bible, so you can compare and contrast. And if one isn't working for you at this time, maybe if you're having a hard time, if you're struggling, maybe try a different version. Maybe you'll find something that works better for you. But the most important thing is that you are spending time in God's Word. I hope this helps you, and I hope that you're able to find a translation that encourages you to spend time with God and His Word. So, we'll see you next time, and God bless.